Hey guys, what's up? Good evening. How are you? Hello to all of my friends out there on YouTube. This is another episode of Eddie G's Comic Culture, sponsored by Black Apparel. Giving a special shout out to those guys and thanking them once again for all the wonderful contributions they've done on the show. If you have a chance, make sure you check out their website at blackapparelblk.com. You will not be disappointed. I'm wanting to give a special shout out to my Instagram friends, of course. Strictly Comedy Vault, who's got some good stuff on his page. If you have an Instagram account, make sure you check it out. The man's got great content and he's an up and coming writer. Definitely worth looking for. Also, giving a special shout out and big up to Blu ray Dan. He's a great reviewer of all things film. The man has got some good stuff, and trust me, you will know exactly what to pick up whenever it is you're interested in a movie. He also sparks some great conversation, and he's got a YouTube channel as well. Make sure you give him a check it out. And on this episode, it's going to be another one of these film tributes. Now, I normally do not do these things with my phone present, but because of the stuff that I had to the notes that I had to take down, and quite a bit of it too as well. I'm keeping it here for for safekeeping and reminder, of course, because there's quite a bit of stuff I want to go over with you guys. And today I want to discuss A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, Freddy's Revenge. Now I know what you guys are thinking. Why is he starting off a tribute episode about a film that's a sequel rather than starting off with the original? Well, I was going to do an entire episode based on the entire series. However, I was watching it last night with my wife. Me and my wife we were about to turn in, and usually we do like to watch movies before we go to bed. And I just had the urge to see the sequel again because of the simple fact of the matter is it's a standout out of all of the films. It's definitely one of the most comedic films out of the entire series, and it's without intent that it happened as well. Now, the reason being is because if you've guys seen the original with Johnny Depp, and I keep forgetting the actress's name. I know her character's name is Nancy in the film. I think it's Heather Langenkamp, if I'm not mistaken. But this sequel in itself is the most oddball picture I've ever seen in my entire life. And I say that with every fiber in my being, that I mean it too. This is definitely the most hilarious sequel out of all of them. Out of all of them. And as I said before, I don't think they did it purposely. I don't think it was their intent when they were making this movie. But there's quite a few things that are off in this film that are definitely, that do more than just raise an eyebrow. It's like, what the hell am I watching here? Okay. And so starting right off, let's go right into it. The movie opens up in a nightmare sequence. Surprise, surprise. Now, the main character of this film apparently is a teenage boy by the name of Jesse Walsh. You see him in a school bus. He's supposedly on his way to class, and apparently the bus driver he's in the bus with two other girls, two oblivious teenage girls, and they're driving down the road at extremely high speeds, passing all the school bus stops, and it's starting to dwell on him that this driver is not their driver. So they go straight into a deserted area, and then all of a sudden, the floor just caves all over around them, and now all of a sudden the bus is literally being held up by some sort of jagged mountain that's holding it by the bound. It's keeping it up in the middle of the bus, like the bus is teetering on that rock. and all sort of, this is, hell's about to break loose. This is 80s cinema. You cannot go, you can't question these kind of things anymore, because when it comes to 80s movies, there's no explanation. It doesn't need it. It's just there. It happens. It's just magic, I guess you could say. But it's definitely. It starts off with that, and then obviously, the driver he comes right out of he leaves the seat, starts walking towards the kids, and you at this point you see it, the silhouette, the hat, the glove. It's Freddy. Freddy's going Freddy's on the prowl. He's on the verge. He's ready to attack. He's going to kill the kids. Blah blah blah. The movie then the scene cuts to the kid waking up, to Jesse waking up in his room. Now, plenty of times and one of the times I had to wonder, like I was constantly wondering why this kid is constantly sweating like a pig every time he wakes up. You know what I'm saying? Like, we've all had nightmares before, and there's times we do wake up with cold sweats or whatever. But this kid is like completely drenched in sweat, like he just ran a marathon for how many days already, and it was just unreal. But I'm gonna get to that in a few, actually, because I'm gonna swing back around that. So obviously, the movie opens up with him, and then he starts, and this is where it gets weird. The guy starts screaming. He has the most feminine scream I have ever heard in my life. And I mean, I don't know how old he's supposed to be in the movie, 16, 17. But at that age, man, no dude screams like that. Like, no dude hits that octave like he hit. Like, he was screaming like a complete girl. And it made no sense. I mean, obviously, I know he was having a nightmare, and it's understandable, so they fleshed that out in the scenes earlier. But Christ, seriously? He hits that high note every time he screams. And it's throughout the whole movie that he does that. But I digress, It happens, so there it is. Then he goes downstairs. He sees his family. His family's is in the kitchen having breakfast. One thing that I noticed, and my wife noticed, as she pointed out to me, because I wasn't wearing my glasses at that time, was the cereal box. Now, at first, it almost looked like the Grinch was on the cereal. So we were wondering, is like, yo, is that the Grinch who stole Christmas on the cereal box? I was like, that can't be. I mean, I know the animated version is old, but I don't think I think it's been out at that point. I think the movie that I know How the Grinch Stole Christmas has been out for quite some time by that time. It was 1985. So we went back, we rewound it and paused it, and then did an up close cue. And it's an Asian man. It's an Asian man on a box of cereal, and the cereal is actually called Fu Manchus. Now, could that I don't know how that could not be any more. Could that be any more blatantly racist? Is beyond me. But again, this is the '80s. But still, but I understand that it's a product of its time. But to have a product labeled that's extremely racist. I don't know how the studio even bothered getting away. How they even got away with that at the final cut made no sense to me. But I mean, Jesus, they could have done. They needed to do something else. Like I would have, if I was a producer on the film, I would have been like, I would have held my hand up real quick. Like, man, you better change the name on that cereal box. Do something, to give it Frosted Squares for all it is. I don't care, but change that. That can't roll. That can't roll out in the cinema like that. But that's definitely one of the things that for some reason sticks out. So the guy goes ahead. He says hi to his family. His dad is the quintessential hard ass. His father's the quintessential '80s father. The hard ass. Everything that's a problem is has to be attributed to drugs. And it's crazy because at that time it was the Reagan era. And quite a bit of issues were going on. Like I said, the crack epidemic was a very strong problem that the country was facing, but it wasn't the only problem that the country was facing at the time. And one of the things that we are going to discuss is the AIDS epidemic that was being ignored, obviously, by our government at that time. I'm not going to get political at this point, but one of the things that was one of the main issues that for some reason was just literally not being touched upon for some reason, as much as the Just Say No campaign. So, as I said before, the father is the quintessential father of the '80s. Everything any issues with teenagers revolved around drugs. If the kid was not acting correctly, or God knows what, depression or any sort of other psychological issues, were literally, it had to be a drug. It was automatically assumed. The assumption was made that the base of the problem was obviously drugs, which was incorrect and not to mention ignorant as all hell. But that's the way it was back in those days, and it was pretty stressful, growing up as a teenager at that time. So it wasn't the easiest thing uh, being a kid during those days. um, but it's all obvious. In all honesty, it makes for it makes for a great conversation, because at the end of the day, like, you get to see the differences. I know the differences of the horror movies between now and then are great. It's definitely come a long way. Um, but you get to see the film for what it's. You get to see the characters for what it was, for what they were at that time. And even though they are made up, and by all means they are stretched to beyond, to the wildest imagination, obviously. But there is a bedrock of truth behind that, and a lot of people suffered harsh consequences because of that nonsense back in the days. But anyway, moving right along. One thing that this movie definitely has a lot of homoerotic subtext. It really does, and it's noticeable from the start, from when you see this kid going to school, and the first scene of him having a softball game, and him and he's like, I guess you could say, a frenemy of sorts. Um, Apparently, there's some scene that the kid gets tagged. One of the kid, he tags the guy out. The guy gets pissed, and he pantses him in front of everyone in the school. And the kid's just bare-assed out on the baseball field in front of everybody. And the guy, and his frenemy, Grady's the character's name. He doesn't even give the kid a chance to pull his pants up. Though, like, he just goes straight around. He grapples him to the floor, and then it just becomes a submission. They start wrestling out in the field. And now, as this is going on, they have a ridiculous gym coach, and I can't for the life of me remember this actor's name. This guy also is another character, a joker, so to speak, because he's always constantly calling these kids dirt balls. That's his number one thing: dirt balls, dirt bags, or whatever the case. And yet he's, on top of them all the time, so to speak. He's constantly giving them crap. He's constantly giving them all kinds of hell, no matter what. But it's just out of this world ridiculous. The stretches that they pull in this movie is just unreal, and because of that, it really goes far. Why it goes far beyond the dream. It goes far beyond anyone's wildest dreams as to how this was. How this goes. Um, he does have a love interest, Jesse. He does have a love interest in the movie. I think the girl's name is Kate, if I'm not mistaken. She looks like a cross between Tiffany and Meryl Streep. Tiffany, the singer who had that '80s hit, I Think We're Alone Now. And she looked almost just like her. It was strange and it was odd. It was almost as if I thought Tiffany was in the movie, but she wasn't, honestly. And she plays his love interest. She actually has a lot of she has a deep understanding of this cat, because apparently for her to see the things that she did to this kid, I would have, like, she didn't come to the conclusion that he might have been gay or something like that, because I honestly thought that this kid was gay, and in reality, when I've read, we'll get back to that actually soon enough. But the way he acted in the movie, there was, like I said, I'm touching up on this. They had the film carry such a homoerotic subtext that it literally doesn't even fit with the series. Because if you watch Nightmare on Elm Street 1, and then you see a Nightmare on Elm Street 3, 4, and 5, you know, it's literally the standout movie. Like, none of the films after follow that formula. And it's strange as hell, because it's like, what is this? And then it becomes it plays on that topic so much that it becomes a comedy. And not in the sense of Freddy Krueger making jokes. It literally becomes a film. It becomes the movie in itself, and it becomes in its own right a comedy. And like I say, and like I said before, I don't think it was that. It was not intentional. It was clearly unintentional that they made that way. They made the film that way, but it turned out that way. And after that, like, one of the many scenes that come along with it is just you know Jesse ends up going out he wants to go out, but his dad tells him he can't leave until he cleans his room. So he goes upstairs to clean his room, and the kid has a wiffle bat. He turns his radio on, and the song "Touch Me, Tease Me All Night Long" starts to play. And in the middle of him cleaning his room, he starts dancing and starts really like getting into his dances to a point where he's holding a wiffle bat and he's gyrating it to a point where it almost is like, I guess he's trying to make it look like his dong, and then he starts singing into it. And then here's the kicker: the guy twerks his bureau drawer shut with his ass. I'm not kidding. This is actually happening in the movie. As he's cleaning his room and he's singing into the wiffle bat, he starts twerking his ass into and closes the bureau drawer shut. And at that moment, that's when his mom and girlfriend walk into the room. Whatever. Again, this is the type of insanity that ensues throughout this movie, and it goes on for the rest of it. Now, at that point, his girlfriend is helping him out, doesn't even question his dance moves or his dance routine whatsoever. She just goes ahead and, begins to assist him with his chores of having to clean his room. And then she goes into his closet and finds Nancy's old diary, which is, filled with all the things that happened in the first movie, all of the events that occurred in front of her face. And obviously it starts clicking that, the nightmares of Freddy Krueger there's a connection now. And this is where my wife actually pointed this out to me. She says that there's a correlation, because there's a few scenes where Jesse walks downstairs and he sees Freddy in his basement, messing with the furnace. Now, of course, we all know that Freddy Krueger worked in the power plant. He worked in the boiler room, and that's how we got. I think that no, he worked in a power plant, but he was burned alive in a boiler room. And I guess the boiler room was right over his room, which explained the constant sweatiness, which where him looked like he was melting all over the place. And there was actually a scene in the movie where the room actually starts melting. The light bulbs. He's got a record that's a vinyl record on the dresser drawer that's also melting from the heat in the room. So it's a little, that finally, so she made the correlation out for that, and thankfully she pointed that out, because I totally overlooked that process throughout the entire movie. But it literally goes right back into the original homoerotic subtext again. The kid actually he leaves his house in a thunderstorm. No umbrella, nothing. Just walks out the house in the middle of a thunderstorm in the middle of the night, and somehow, some way, stumbles into a gay bar. Now here's where it gets funky. As he's at the gay bar, he goes to the bar and asks for a beer. Now the kid goes ahead, he takes the beer and he starts pouring it into a glass himself. Why he's pouring a beer in a glass, I have no idea. As he's pouring the beer into the glass, out of nowhere, a hand grabs his hand. The camera pans up, and guess who it is? His gym teacher. His gym teacher that he finds wearing a leather vest in a gay club. Now here's where it gets weird and creepy at that. The next scene, it cuts to him, Jesse, back in school at what must be 2 o'clock in the morning, running laps in the gymnasium. Get the hell out of here. Do you think man, that made no sense whatsoever, because the kid had the kid had more ammunition than he did. Jesse had more ammunition for him than the gym teacher. At that point, he should have just said, if you don't want the school or everyone else to know about your other secret life, you better leave me the hell alone and get what I want to get out of this beer. Because there was no way in hell anyone in their right mind would go back to the school gymnasium at that time of night to run laps, and barefoot at that, no less. Man, that was the most ridiculous. Again, it stretches out the phone. It literally stretches reality to a whole nother level. Like it goes beyond, it goes above and beyond it. And at this point now it's hilarious. Now it's not even a horror movie anymore. Now we're looking at a comedy. That's point blank what you're looking at is a comedy. It's not even you can't even call it a Nightmare on Elm Street anymore. It just so happens to be a I can't even think of an alternate title right about now. All I know is it just stars Freddy Krueger, who he just so happens to be in the movie. But by the way, I gotta give it up to the makeup effects team because what they did with Freddy Krueger in 1985, while that the way they got Robert Englund set up was great. It was phenomenal. I gotta tell you that's one hell of a movie for that. I'll give them props to that. Credit to where credit is due. But that was the most awkward and literally stupid and astounding scene I've ever seen at once in my life. It was all things at once, literally. So for that to be the case, it wasn't any. It just didn't feel like a Nightmare on Elm Street anymore. And so cut to the fact that the guy's in the gym, and now the gym teacher's having a cigarette. He's watching Jesse running laps still in the gym. Now all of a sudden, the weird stuff starts to go on. The tables and all of the equipment starts moving. Basketballs and tennis balls and I don't know what kind of message were they sending by throwing balls in the air like that, buddy, but your guess is as good as mine. But all this equipment just starts automatically flying all over the place. And here's when the creep level goes from bad to worse. Freddy somehow telekinetically drags this man and strips him naked, mind you, in front of Jesse in the showers. Now he's literally tied up in the shower, in the locker room showers, and he gets stripped down naked and gets towel whipped on his bare ass. Literally towel whipped on his bare ass, and then out of nowhere, Freddy appears and claws the back. First of all, claws his back to death, which kind of really didn't look like it made any sense considering he only did like 2 deep scratches, so I don't know how the man bled out like that fast. But also, again, like I said, this movie stretches the realm of the impossible to a whole nother level. It really does. It does that, and it does it so unbelievably bad that it's ridiculous at this point. Like I said, it unintentionally became a comedy. So once that happens, Freddy goes ahead, he kills the gym teacher. The gym teacher's dead. And now Jesse's all out of luck. He's down because he's being tormented every night with these nightmares. And, his dad and his mom are starting to naturally notice and get worried. The father, once again, reverting back to the situation that this child is on drugs. He's, his wife automatically, and suggests that he needs a therapist. And the man, his retort is immediately, that boy needs a methadone clinic. I'm telling you, this isn't made up. This is the reality. This is what the movie is. This is what consists, and this is what this movie consists of. Ridiculousness. So at that point, it's just like, okay, now I know where this is going. Whatever. Let's bypass the political messages, of course, and back to the story at hand. So Jesse ends up getting and getting an invite to a pool party that's supposedly being thrown by one of the neighbors. Apparently, this guy whose daughter is in school as well. He ends up throwing a barbecue, and it's like 12 midnight, and there's a whole bunch of high school kids there. Him and his wife, depart. They go back into the house for the night or whatever, and this is one of the stupid things I've ever seen in my life. The man starts getting pissed after when they turn the lights off to their rooms to their room. The kids start going they start going buck wild in the pool and losing their minds. Like, what the hell did you expect? You left a whole entire group of teenagers in your pool while you were for a party you threw yourself, and you didn't expect for them to go ahead and lose it and get the alcohol ready, and the beers and beer pongs are going to be happening just like that off the bat. You're fooling yourself, ignorant retard. But whatever. Back to the subject at hand. Oh, and the father's still in complete denial about the house. even after the son finally breaks his silence on, after Jesse finally breaks his silence to his father about what happened in the house, da 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 da, this, that, and the third, the father still wants to play ignorance up until the point where their canaries just die from heat out of nowhere, and they're in the bird cage. One spontaneously combusts in the midair, and all you just see are feathers just flying all over the place. Like, you know what, this movie is such a poor product of its time that the only reason that it made money was because it was a sequel to an extremely successful horror franchise, and it started the rest of the other piss poor sequels. Well, not the piss poor sequels, because The Nightmare on Elm Street 3 was leaps and bounds ahead of Part 2. Leaps and bounds ahead of Part 2. I mean, miles and miles ahead as far as quality is concerned over Part 2. Part 2 was just, let me, like, like, a lot of people find the others were pretty bad movies, and I'm sure, they really do have their, they really are just crap as far as I'm concerned. They're just good stuff to pass the time and laugh at. But this movie itself just takes the cake in all essence of the word. But I guess the father finally comes to the conclusion that yo man, my house is pretty much possessed by an evil spirit right now. So let me just start taking my son's word, this that. So finally, throughout the whole movie, Jesse's being tormented by Freddy because, of course, Freddy wants to possess his body to come into the world and commit his and just return to a massacre again. And Freddy finally makes his appearance towards the end of the movie during their pool party, and the only person who's ballsy enough to take him down is his girlfriend. His girlfriend believes that obviously he's involved. That this stuff is that she was the only one that was riding with him from the very beginning, that he was suffering from some serious trauma. And then she follows him over to the power plant, and this is where the special effects go to complete garbage, as you see these two Rottweilers that have these Halloween masks on their faces, and I guess they're supposed to be demon dogs, but they just did a complete. I guess the budget for the makeup all went to Robert Englund for him being Freddy Krueger, because when you see those two dogs, they kind of look like Teletubby Rottweilers. It just makes no sense. It's just like it really just throws you off. Like I said, it just once again bad decision making on the producer's behalf for this. But oddly enough, she bypasses them, defeats them, and then she finds her boyfriend, who is now fully possessed and in complete Freddy Krueger mode, and he somehow beats him, I guess, with the power of love or some shit, I guess he just beats him with the power of love or whatever, and he comes back to life, the kid's back to normal, he's back to human form. Now, obviously, of course, the movie ends, it closes out again with the school bus, and Freddy's return is, obviously teased at the end of the movie, and of course, you got and then which we all know leads on to the other sequels. So, but in other words, I just wanted to revert back to the fact that there was a lot of homoerotic subtext in this movie, and this is where I pull my phone out. And, at this point, as I done my research on the movie, I read about. And there is a mention of the homoerotic subtext, by the way, if you Wikipedia it. And the actor, Jesse, Mark Patton, who plays Jesse, of course, he really referred to the fact that his character in the movie was the final girl. And that at the time of its release, one publication referred to it as the gayest horror film ever. Now, a lot of the stuff is going on. He says in one of the interviews he has here, he mentions the scene about the the props. He says, I'm lying in bed and I'm a Pieta and the candles are dripping and they're bending like phalluses and white wax is dripping all over. It's like I'm the center of a Bukkake video. Wow. Wow, that says enough. Because and then it goes on to some deep stuff here. He's because he was really gay in real life. Yeah, he's still alive actually, but he's gay in real life, and he said that because he felt betrayed since the filmmakers were aware that he was gay but closeted, and thus had considerable leverage over him in having him perform a role that, combined with his performance as a gay teen in Come Back to the Five and Dime, Jimmy Dean, the year before, led to him being typecast as gay, which called attention to what he was trying to avoid discussing and would have forestalled him getting any significant roles in 1980s Hollywood. Now, when you go down to it, when you read to it, it's actually Robert Englund who mentions it as well. He even addresses the situation. But no, one of the scenes actually here, it says England was actually prepared to insert one of his hand's knife blades into Jesse's mouth instead of merely caressing his lips with it as he does in the finished film, but Patton did not feel comfortable with it. The film's makeup artist recommended to Patton that he not do the scene that way in order to protect his image. Now, this is going on to what Robert Englund said in Attitude magazine in February 2010. The second Nightmare on Elm Street is obviously intended as a bisexual themed film. It was early 80s, pre-AIDS paranoia. Jesse's wrestling with whether to come out or not and his own sexual desires was manifested by Freddy. His friend is the object of his affection. That's all there in that film. We did it subtly, but the casting of Mark Patton was intentional too, because Mark was out and had done Come Back to the Five and Dime, Jimmy Dean. Now, it also mentions here that in another article written by Brent Hardinger for After Elton, it is stated that a frequent debate in gay pop culture circles is this: just how gay was 1985's A Nightmare on Elm Street 2: Freddy's Revenge, the first Elm Street sequel? The imagery in the movie makes it seem unmistakably gay, but the filmmakers have all along denied that was their intention. Now, it goes on saying that during his interview segment for the documentary Never Sleep Again, The Elm Street Legacy, David Chaskin admitted that the gay themes were intentional, which he had denied up until that point. So with that being said, you guys already know exactly what to go into, what to expect going into this movie, and with all the themes that it carries along, it definitely seems to me that they did try to bring some sort of awareness to that. However, they did it pretty poorly in my in my opinion, honestly. Just it really didn't. I don't mind that they used that. I didn't mind the fact that they brought awareness to that at that time. I just didn't think that they should have exploited it the way they did. Like, it really didn't become, like, it wasn't a regular movie anymore. It wasn't a Freddy movie anymore. It makes, and that's why all of that makes that film stand out the way it is, the way it does, as compared to the other sequels. Because it made it comedic to a point where it was just, I almost felt like, the director and producers were kind of poking fun at the kid for for his sexual orientation. And at that point, I just think that it's kind of wrong that they did that, but they knew what they were doing, and they wanted to get some sort of a message across, no matter how poor it was, but they got their message across. But it's definitely one of those films that if you want to see, then you got to see it with an open mind. I mean, it's nothing. It's not something that you would go crazy. It's not something. It's not so much as a big deal. It's just the theme of it, the theme of the movie in itself. Literally, just It doesn't coincide with the rest of the series, the franchise. And so, with that being said, that's why I wanted to do this special because to me that movie stands out the most, and quite a bit. It does. The movie does quite a bit as far as it being comedic for its intent, for the themes that it takes. For the themes that it tackles head on, and they made it so that I don't think that, like I said, I don't think that it was intentional to make fun of the community at at that level. I just think that they wanted to call attention to it and try to use this cat again as I guess they try to do something different. I guess their intention was to try to do something different with the movie that all the other slasher films were already doing at that time, because there was quite a bit of sequels coming out from uh, what's that? Friday the 13th. By that time, Friday the 13th was churning out sequels like every year. At that point, there was a Jason movie every other. Like you would swear there was a Jason movie coming out every other 2 weeks or so, but and it was always the same thing. Blase blah. The girl in the end, and it was like I said, like they said, the final girl in the movie. But with that being said, it was just it had a lot of elements that went with that theme of of having the kid as a closeted homosexual, and he was I guess he kind of had, and it did kind of play along to that as well. Like it's better, like at some point you wonder if him and his boy Grady, if he had a thing for his boy Grady or not. Who knew? Who knows? God knows. You know what I'm saying? What direction they were going with that? They were just. I guess it was kind of like a hodgepodge of let's see what can work with this and what sticks and what doesn't. But it's definitely a movie to check out. That's definitely worth checking out. But don't go into it thinking anything else. Don't go into it. If you're gonna go into it with an observing eye, then make sure that you observe it for the right reasons. Because if you're gonna go in there as a film critic, you're gonna go in there hating the movie. Honestly, you're just gonna come out with a. You're honestly gonna just come out with. It's not a great film by any means. Honestly speaking, it's really not. So don't take don't take my word as gold on that. It's really not. It's far from it, quite honestly, but it's still good enough to go ahead and watch and pass the time and enjoy, because it's actually pretty, the theme that it plays on just goes out to a point. It gets so outrageous and outlandish that it actually becomes comedic, and it was the worst part. And the worst part to me about it was that it was comedic but unintentionally. So with that being said, you know it's definitely it sticks out like a sore thumb, to say the least. But no, nonetheless, man, if you ever have the opportunity, get some popcorn, get your favorite soft drink, and make sure you sit down, relax, and get ready to have some good laughs on this one. You know, but nonetheless, it's still a fun film to watch, and it's definitely it's definitely a hell of a memorable movie at that. To be honest with you, for me to make a tribute episode on my show for it, it definitely warrants that. So you guys definitely need to check it out. Um, but the next time around, I will be discussing the first film, and then I will discuss part three, which is a great installment of this series, a fantastic installment, if I may say so myself. Um, I'm not gonna give too much away about that, but if you guys have known, if you guys have seen the movie, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So make sure you ride with me for those two. And with that being said, I'm just going to close this one out. And thank you once again for watching the show. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, you know where the comment section is. Make sure you type one up. I'll definitely be reviewing everything as far as content is concerned. And let's get a conversation going, man. This is a forum for everybody. Until then, I'll see you next time. Have a great Labor Day weekend. Stay safe. Take care.